Wolf, it's Dennis from the Australian Rock Show. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Well, considering the circumstances, I'm doing good. But, things in general could be better.
Listen, as someone who owned much of the Accept material back in the 1980s, let me start by saying what an honour it is to chat with you this evening. However, although rock and roll nostalgia does have its place, I do wish to focus the interview on the brand new album titled Too Mean to Die, which is the purpose of our chat today. I guess an obvious first question is, how difficult has it been over the past 12 months to finalise the new record with COVID-19 causing so many disruptions?
It's been okay. It had its challenges initially when we were recording, but the album's been in the can since about August, I think. And really, lockdown has affected the touring much more than the recording of this album. There was a little bit of a challenge when we really couldn't travel anymore all of a sudden, because Andy couldn't come to us to record the last batch of the songs. Well, the band was in Nashville, Tennessee, in the States. Andy he lives in the UK, and we wanted to finish these songs, but he couldn't come to us. So we had to hook him up remotely, and he was sort of our virtual producer from far away, which had its own challenges, but really it was doable, and it didn't really affect the quality of the album much. I mean, if anything, the good side was we couldn't be on tour, so we had time to work on this album, which we normally would have not have had. So maybe it helped it a little bit in the end in that way, but of course everybody would have preferred, we could have done without all that COVID stuff,
There are some US tour dates listed, I saw on the band's website, for April, along with some mid-year festival dates in Europe locked in. Are they still going ahead, or is it pretty much a wait-and-see approach?
Yeah, it's a wait-and-see thing. I mean, they tell us they're happening, and I think they're pushing forward as if it was possible, but maybe the reality is nobody quite really knows yet, and they're just hoping it will be okay by then. I can't imagine anybody knows for sure anything in this day and age. I mean, we all just hope, right? I mean, unless, I honestly have no answer. It's more or less a wait and see kind of thing.
Sure. Well, we kicked off this show with the hard-hitting title track, which I just love. Wonderful lyrics in there too, such as, I'm a heavy metal warrior, restless son of a bitch, a weapon of destruction with both hands on the switch. How did that title track come about?
Yeah, those are funny lyrics. Mark is brilliant at these kind of, rock and roll saying things. I love it. That album, that title track was actually sort of written on purpose. I had the saying, I really liked the saying "Too Mean to Die" as an album track, and then I wrote the song for it and came up with a bunch of riffs and wrote this after the fact. I had the title in my head first and then wrote the song accordingly. Most of the time it happens the other way around, that I start with some musical ideas and some riffs and then think of some words to fit the song. But occasionally it's the other way around. And also Zombie Apocalypse, the next track, that's also written that way. Mark had given me that title and I liked it. I thought Zombie Apocalypse sounds really cool. And, that was there first. It's always a building block that you start with.
Too Mean to Die, I read, is album number 16 for the band, and it is also album number 5 with Mark up front. It's never easy to fill the shoes of a well-known and unique-sounding lead vocalist like Udo, but I guess Mark has very much made the position his own, hasn't he? Dare I say, close to the perfect fit.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, you absolutely. I say it all day long. He's the perfect man. And without him, he wouldn't be here today, because really when we regrouped 10 years ago, or I think it's 11 years by now, he was the one who enabled us to do this, because without him, there would have been no singer, no Accept, because Udo was doing his own thing. He wasn't interested, and he made it clear he would never work with us again. So, we basically felt it's him or nobody, because, it felt so good for us that when we met Mark, that we felt that we said, if it's not going to work with Mark, it's never going to work, because he seemed like a perfect guy. He could definitely reproduce the old stuff perfectly well, and we felt he can do so much more. And now we've done 5 studio albums together, and the proof is there. I think he's a perfect man.
I did read that when he was in TT Quick, they would cover a couple of Accept songs in their live set back in the day. So maybe it's all meant to be that way.
Strange is how it sometimes fits together, isn't it? Yeah, I often felt like this time in 2009, when we started to think about re-firing up the machine, there was a few magic moments, and that was one of them when we met Mark. But another magic moment was when all of a sudden we get this phone call from Andy Sneap that he wants to produce with us, and because he turned out to be just as important as Mark was, and it all fell together so well. It felt really like the stars aligned in our favor during that time. Sometimes it's the opposite way. I've seen it the other way around. We had a really dark time in our career during the Eat the Heat time, when we recorded an album with David Rees, and that whole album, nothing fell in place. Everything was going wrong. Sometimes there's times in life when everything works against you too. It's crazy, isn't it?
I'm going to talk about Andy in just a bit, but I just want to talk about a couple more tracks on the new album. I have listened to the new album a few times, and for mine, the standout track is The Undertaker. That's the song which we're going to close out this show with. Really, really catchy. It's got some lovely guitar work, and it's a guitar solo which nearly sings, if you know what I mean. That's how I would describe it. It's a singing guitar solo. The intro for mine sounds a little like classic UFO, which I absolutely dig. And again, more great lyrics with a play on words there. He works all day and digs all night. He loves the dead. They are his life. Anthemic and some crows at the end. Wonderful. Wonderful. What can you tell us about The Undertaker?
Thank you. Well, that's another example that's sort of written backwards. And Mark gave me these lyrics as in the form of just lyrics, no musical context whatsoever. He had just written it basically in the form of a poem, and he was talking about apparently some creepy undertaker guy that makes a living by burying dead people, which is, of course, somebody must do it. But I was thinking, when I read those lyrics, almost like you had this visual image in mind of this dude dressed in black, and almost like from a Western movie with a crow on his shoulder, maybe something. And then it inspired me to write the music the way that I did. And I felt it needed to have a little bit of a spooky feeling, and at this musical, this chord progression that I've been toying around with, and I changed the key and I made it fit into that song. So it all blended together quite well. And, it felt like a quite complete song early on. And that's the song where we all felt it's the best suited for a video. So when the label asked us for a song to be pre-released as a video, as a single, we felt like that should be the one, because it would make for a nice video. And so we, shot this video we had it shot in Poland, but also that happened during Corona lockdown times, which meant we couldn't be there for the main shoot. We had to shoot our sequence in Nashville, Tennessee on a cemetery, and the main part was shot in Poland there with the actor in that old castle and all that. But, it all fit together in the end. And that's, by the way, the reason why the 5 of us in the video, and the 6th guy, Uwe, the guitar player, he couldn't travel from Germany to either Poland or the United States. So we had to leave him out, because some fans were wondering, like, why is he not in the video? Well, it was that. It was Corona,
Wolf, the band toured Australia for the first time back in late 2014. I imagine you have fond memories of that visit?
Oh, it was brilliant. I loved it down there. We've only been there very briefly, almost in and out in a matter of a couple, 3, 4, 5 days. I don't know, but it wasn't very long. And I wish we could come back and do some more touring, but I guess Australia is so big that there's only so few cities. I wish we could spend a few weeks down there. I loved it down there.
Was there ever talk of an Australian tour back in the mid-1980s? The reason I ask is because you may not know that Russian Roulette got in the top 100 here up to 93.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why wasn't I told? Whose fault is that? No, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Really, Russian roulette. Go figure. Huh.
Well, as incidentally, as someone who purchased Russian Roulette when it was released and absolutely loved it, I think a song like Monster Man in particular is right up there with any of the band's most well-loved songs. And if I want to introduce some of the band's older material to a new fan, sure, I'll play them balls to the wall and fast as a shark, but I will also play them a track like Monster Man, which I think defines the band's sound as much as, the well-known tracks. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. That's a good song. I like it. We'll still play it. We'll still play it occasionally. It's still one of the few tracks we actually end up playing live off that album. It's a shame there's not. I mean, it's more or less the way looking back at that album. I think it's great. But for some reason or another, we don't play a lot of these songs live. I felt that was a lot of more of a studio album, maybe. I don't know why. There's a lot of layered vocals and a lot of big production stuff happening on that album that doesn't translate so well to live performances. I don't know why, because I really like the album too. But, we never play that many songs of that album.
You did just mention Andy Sneap, and I guess obviously when older rock fans think of Accept and producers, the name Dieter Dirks comes to mind. I guess, was there anything which Dieter would do in the studio back in the day? And I should also include engineer Michael Wagner as well. Did either of those guys do anything in particular in the studio, I guess, which has left a lasting effect on you, something which you still do today?
I would say that Dieter was maybe the guy who taught us a lot, because he was really on a different level than all the guys we had worked on who we had worked with before. So, and he was also clearly on a different level than we were, because he was the big name producer. He had worked with the Scorpions, international success, million selling albums. So he was a big name producer in respect to us. And back in the 80s, it was all about the big name producer. Like, who was that name on the back of your album cover? That's what people really paid a lot of attention to. So we went with him because we felt like he would get us up to that next level. And when we started working with him, he indeed sat us down and really taught us a lot about how to properly play in the pocket, for instance. That's the most important lesson I learned back then. Because until then, we kind of just, I don't know, we just felt we played whatever felt right and didn't really pay that close attention to detail work, I guess. But he really was obsessed with certain things. Like, I remember guitar tuning was one of the, he drove us crazy with guitar tuning. It was seemingly never in tune enough for him. And then it was never in time enough for him. It was always like, we didn't hear it initially, but after a while we caught on, and it really taught us a lot how to be properly in sync with one another, if you want. So that's a good lesson we learned from Dieter Dirks. Yeah. Overall, I'd say he still wasn't the right guy for us, because he was not really a metal head. He was a rock guy. I think he was better suited for the Scorpions and maybe some other guys, but I don't think he was really a metal fan ever, and still wasn't. So that's where Andy comes in. He's really more the metal fan who's grew up listening to heavy metal. He grew up to listening to Accept, and he loves Accept, and he loves things metal. So it can't be metal enough for him, So, so he's definitely on a different scale altogether, and definitely better suited for us.
Let me hit you with some random questions before we finish up. We are going to run out of time. I guess as an Australian music historian, I do need to make mention of the band's second single, I'm a Rebel, written by Alexander Young for his brothers, obviously in AC/DC. How different is Accept's arrangement to the AC/DC recording? And I might add that 40 years on, I think your recording of I'm a Rebel holds up very well. I just love it.
Oh, thank you. I think the arrangement is actually the same.
Same.
And I remember we actually worked with Alexander Young. I think he came to the studio, if I remember properly. But he still didn't end up producing. I think he just supervised our demos or something, if I recall correctly, because we made some demo tracks in the same studio. I think he came out, we started working with him, and somehow, maybe it was the English and maybe there was a translation problem. Somehow we didn't really get along with one another. I mean, we didn't dislike him, but somehow it didn't feel like the right fit. And I can't recall for sure why we didn't work together more, but I remember he came out for a day or so. And I think it's a brilliant track, but I actually do remember that the original version demo with AC/DC had some magic that got a little bit lost when we re-recorded it, because it was Bon Scott on the original demo that we heard. And it's still in the archive somewhere. But of course, it's locked away forever and it's never going to see the light of day. But it does exist because I still heard it a few years ago on somebody's iPhone. Namely, the guy who actually introduced us to that song was our publisher from our publishing company in Hamburg, Schacht Verlag. And he's since passed away, and it probably stayed on his iPhone and will never see the light of day.
Back in 2016, author Martin Popoff released a book on the band titled Metal Heart, Aiming High with Accept. Surely there's enough interest in the band, especially in Europe and Japan, to warrant an official story on the band. Is a book project something in the pipeline?
Not for me, it isn't.
Right.
No, I would never. I mean, it would be a painful process for me to go through all the history. And, I don't enjoy thinking about the past or talking about the past particularly. I mean, I don't mind the interview questions here and there, but personally, I don't want to get involved in it so deeply. It's nothing that I enjoy doing. I enjoy living in the moment, thinking about the future and all that, but I don't know. What's done is done. I don't really just second guess everything and revisit all these things in detail. And, it's not something I would want to do.
Many of your longtime fans will be aware of your passion for photography, and I'm not sure if your website is still up and running, but some time back you displayed some lovely images of both Les Pauls and Chet Atkins guitars. I encourage fans to search those out. But as a fan of black and white photography, you did have some shots. I think they were taken in Vermont some time back. Absolutely stunning. I guess
wow,
question.
You know your stuff.
I love black and white photography. Do you think photography has lost its charm in the modern world?
It has.
Yeah.
For me, it has. Ever since when it was digital, it really went. It was getting to the point where it's ridiculously easy to take good photographs. Back in the day, especially with black and white photography, when you're talking about developing your own film and going in the darkroom, spending hours getting the perfect print, it was a craft that was really challenging. It took you a long time, and I liked that. I mean, it was painful, difficult sometimes, but I liked that challenge, and I really was ambitious, and I was obsessed with it, getting it right and getting to the point where you're good at it. And then digital photography made it so easy, and so, because you get the instant feedback, and if it's not right, you can still tweak it later. And all of a sudden I'm thinking like, all right, what's the point now? It's anybody can do it now. And so I mean, it's still difficult to take a good photograph because it's about the composition, but the other aspect of it, the craft aspect, the secret recipe for your developer and all that kind of stuff fascinated me, and I read books.
Yeah, me too.
I had my own work. I mean, I was obsessed with it, really. And that fascinated me, and that's all gone now. It's just like I take my iPhone and there it is. Perfect. Yeah. Or if it's not, you just make one little tweak and, so it's like I lost a little bit of interest. It's bizarre. You would think if something gets easier, it would be more exciting. But in this
maybe
case,
no,
like
I don't think so. But mate, we had better finish up. The new album is called Too Mean to Die, which is out on January 29th on Nuclear Blast. I will give all the ordering details at the end of the show. acceptworldwide.com is the place fans need to visit. I did note a very cool looking vinyl gatefold edition which features a pop-up snake, so if you're a long-time fan, I just know you're going to want to add that to collection. Wolf, I recently found a fan comment online which for many fans pretty much sums up this new album, and I quote, "Accept is the perfect example of what heavy metal should be. Their sound, their vibe, it's everything I love about metal. I could not have said it any better. And I think that's a great way to close out our interview.
Oh, thank you very much, my friend. That was a nice comment. So I'm glad you enjoy it. So please, everybody, until we can actually go on tour and see everybody maybe in Australia in person again. Yeah, I'd like you to check out the new album and enjoy it and, stay safe.
Absolutely. Before you go, every guest on our show gets to choose a song by an Australian band. What would you like to choose and why?
Oh, well, there's only one Australian band that I care about. Sorry, it's AC/DC.
Okay. What would you like to go with?
How about today we do A Whole Lot of Rosie?
Let's do that. Wonderful. Good luck with the new album. It's a great record, and for the remainder of the year. I do know you've got a couple of dates lined up for Tokyo, which look pretty special in later in the year.
Yeah, they do.
Hopefully they can go ahead.
Yeah, hopefully there's a bunch of shows that are scheduled still, and hopefully they can happen, at least most of them. So we'll see.
Thank you. Love it. Enjoyed chatting with you. Take care. Bye-bye.
As always, take care. Bye-bye.